Hey everybody, welcome back to myRE360's Be Your Own General Contractor. My name is Adonis Lockett, and in this module, we're going to be discussing selecting your subs. It is critical, as I've mentioned multiple times in our previous modules, the importance of having a good team. But we need to talk about what needs to be done to get us to a good team. So in the previous modules, we talked about the best ways to identify who your potential subcontractors should be. In this module, we're going to be discussing everything that you should consider when actually selecting your subcontractor that's going to be part of your team. So the first thing you want to do is interview your subcontractor. So you want to ask technical questions about their craft you already know the answer to, or you have at least researched and have a general understanding of. For example, you do not want to ask a subjective question. You want to ask a question that has a very straightforward and one-dimensional answer. You also want to have them explain their pricing. Are they flat rate? Are they by the hour? By the square foot? Are they just by the job? You want to interview them to make sure you understand how they go about getting to the price that they're going to charge you. You also want to ask them, in their price, does that include material, or are you expected to pay for material or supplies separately? This is a very common thing that is not discussed and ultimately can sway your budget in a way you did not expect. You also want to ask about their support system. Do they have assistants, employees? Are you going to be working with them directly, or are you going to be working with their team or subordinates? So you want to understand their full scope and how they conduct business and who comprises their overall team. You want to also clearly convey your expectations and ask, does your expectations meet what they're typically used to working with? So if there is a time frame, a specific quality, or a certain price range that you're looking to work within, can they accommodate your request? Next thing you want to do, take them to a house and have them walk you through their process in great detail. Have them walk you through how they evaluate, how they price out, and how they identify the time frame that is going to take them to complete a function. It is important for you to know these things because as you're putting together your project workflow, it is important you understand how each subcontractor works and how they go about putting their timeline together for their particular responsibility. Talk pricing. Be flexible but firm. Now, what that means when you talk pricing, the first thing you need to do is make sure you understand what the standard market rate for their service is. Now, that can be a very touchy situation because, to be honest, it is not your responsibility to tell someone what they should be charging for their service, especially for a company that offers exceptional service and exceptional customer service. However, it's also your responsibility as an investor and a general contractor to make sure you understand what the standard local market rates are for the work that you're going to be paying for. So when I make the comment, be flexible but firm, meaning that whatever you agree to, be firm in your position that the reason why they were hired was based on a pricing that you both discussed and agreed to, that you did not anticipate being modified later in the relationship. So make sure you understand their pricing, how they go about pricing, and make sure you convey to them how you go about paying them and how you came up with what your thoughts of industry standards were to see if there are any disconnects. And more importantly, especially for licensed trade service, you need to get their license and insurance information. Trade technicians like electricians or plumbers that require license to do work, especially when permits are required, is essential. And you do not want an unlicensed person doing a very risky, meaning health or safety risky project and they're unlicensed or do not have the proper credentials. Should something happen, they are completely or potentially off the hook and all of the liability falls back on you. A licensed person will typically be more cautious and more in tune with what the requirements are legally and morally about what should be done, because they know that if they do something that's in opposition of what good faith is as a licensed person, they can lose their license. So it is really important to make sure when you're dealing with trades that have license required, and typically that you actually secure a copy of their license and a copy of their insurance information. So as part of interviewing your subs, just to recap, you want to ask technical questions about their craft, ask questions that you understand or has a one-dimensional answer. Make sure they clearly explain their pricing, flat rate by the hour, dollar per square foot, by the job, etc. You ask about their support system, employees, assistants, whatever the case may be, virtual assistants, whatever it is. Ask what is in place should they themselves become busy or incapable of communicating with you. Clearly convey expectations, and just as importantly, ask the subcontractors their expectations of you. Take them to a house, let them walk a project and explain their process. Talk pricing, be flexible but firm, and always get their license and insurance information. So now that you've interviewed your subcontractor and you believe that this is the right one for you, you want to go ahead and shadow that subcontractor to learn their style. A good subcontractor will want to educate you on the work they do, how they do it, and their typical process. They want you to understand all of the intricacies of their trade, so as they're explaining something to you or potentially bidding out future jobs, they know that you have an understanding of what it is they're doing and why their pricing is the way it is. You also want to pay attention to their body language when questions are asked. Are they annoyed? Are they irritated? Are they put off? Are they dismissive, standoffish? Pay attention to the way they receive feedback or questions, because that may be very telling of the relationship you can expect down the stretch. If something is unclear, ask them to re-explain. And in that explanation, if you're still not clear, ask them to explain it another way. You do not want to have your subcontractor explain a process, pricing, or anything that you don't understand, and you just do this to move the conversation along. Because what will happen is all you're going to do is create frustration for yourself and the subcontractor at a later point when you actually come across that same topic in which you don't understand. And one thing I'm going to tell you, it is a lot easier to get frustrated in the middle of a project when a lot of money is tied up versus before a project starts. So when you have money on the line and someone's explaining something that you don't understand, it's a lot more difficult to understand why you believe you're being charged a premium or potentially overcharged if you don't understand what it is that they're saying. So it is critical that you pay attention and clearly convey when you do not understand something that is being explained to you. Do not walk away from a conversation with a subcontractor unclear of what you're paying for. Meaning that if they razzle-dazzle you and throw some egregious number and you don't understand how they got to that number, you need to have them explain it. Have them write it down. Have them draw a picture or whatever it is that they need to do to help you understand. Make sure you have a clear understanding of the pricing to expect when dealing with their subcontractor, and make sure you understand clearly when that subcontractor expects to get paid when their particular function is complete. Know if you're paying for material or if you agree that that is the responsibility of the subcontractor. You will hear me say that a lot through this education series because a lot of good relationships have fallen apart for a simple misunderstanding of who was paying for the material. Also, if for any reason you decide that you're paying for the material, you also need to ask the question, are you hauling the material or are you paying for the material in which they're going to pick up at a later time? Again, if you're working a 9 to 5 or another job, if you live across town, you hauling material may seem like a good idea, saving $50 until you have to drive 3 hours there and back, rent a truck, or anything of the such that will ultimately cost 5 times what it would have taken you to just pay the subcontractor the delivery of the material. So be clear not only of who's paying for it, but who's actually picking up and delivering the material that's needed for that particular service. Do not be modest in asking, is there a markup on the material if the subcontractor is paying for it? It is not uncommon for a vendor or a sub to mark up the price of material 10, 15, 25, 50% because they themselves still have to pay for gas to go pick up their material. They're spending their time, so they may end up marking up that particular material or supplies. Now, the reason why it is important to ask this question, because if a subcontractor is giving you a price that seems to be higher than what the market is calling for, you want to understand and be mindful that they're factoring in their time, their gas, or maybe even employees that they have to go send out to pick up this material. This may impact the price that they give to you. So where their price was seemingly reasonable, now seems like a premium. Be mindful that if you're going to spend 2 hours to go pick up material, that subcontractor is going to have to spend those same 2 hours, and that may play a factor in understanding their pricing model. So make sure you ask who's paying for it, who's delivering it, and is there a markup if they, as the subcontractor, are handling the material. And just as importantly, where is this material being stored? Are they storing it in their vehicle, at their home, at a storage facility, or are they storing it at the job? I'm going to tell you right now, if they have intentions of storing any material that you are paying for at the job site, you want to clearly advise them, do not store material at the job site. Because if the material is stolen, who is going to pay for that? You? Is the sub going to require you to pay for it? Are they going to expect you to file an insurance claim that's going to be held against you to pay for material that they left at your project? These are questions that will snowball into really big and potential grand conflicts between you and your subcontractor. It's going to create obvious financial issues because someone's going to have to pay for that material again. And it just creates an unnecessary talking point that can be avoided if you get ahead of it in advance. So beyond understanding who's buying, who's hauling, make sure you are both clear where the material is going to be stored, or more importantly, where it's not going to be stored. And you need to stand firm to let your subcontractors know, do not store material or tools at the job site, because if it is stolen, it is not your responsibility. And the expectation is that they are to replace any material or tools stolen from the job site, especially when you've made it clear to not store those items there. So this is one of those things that it may be uncomfortable to talk about, but you definitely have to have that conversation and clearly convey and explain your expectations are, do not store material or tools. And if you do store material or tools, you're doing it at your own risk. And if something were to happen, you as the investor or general contractor will not pay for it. But again, these are all talking points that if you just have the conversation in advance, a lot of unnecessary headaches can be avoided. So to recap, interview your subs the same way you would interview for a job, whether you're offering the job or taking the job. There are typically interviews to make sure that the job being offered and the person filling that job sync and it is a good match. Ask questions, and ask questions unapologetically. Ask questions that are uncomfortable, ask questions that may be invasive, but ask questions in advance so you don't have to ask questions in the middle of a project. The temperament and the way these questions may be answered can be very different before a job starts or in the middle of a job. Have your subcontractor explain their process and their pricing. Have them explain their support system and their team. Have them explain whether you're going to be dealing with them or a team member or both. Set expectations. Make sure your expectations are clearly conveyed to your subs and vendors, and also, and respectfully, ask them to explain their expectations of you. Respect is a two-way street, and expectations are going to be managed bi-directionally, meaning you're going to expect them to do good work and they're going to expect to be paid on time and to be treated with a certain degree of respect and professionalism. Shadow your sub and learn their style. Learn everything about them, so as you get deeper into a project or get involved with future projects, you have a clear understanding of their turn time, their pricing, their quality of work, the way they handle material, the way they handle conflict. Shadow them and understand, because the better relationship you create with your subcontractors, the more you guys will be able to grow as a team. You may be able to get discounts or breaks on the pricing, and the better overall relationship you will have as professionals. You guys have been terrific. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys. Make sure to click the like button on this video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on social media. My name is Adonis Lockett, and you can find me at Adonis Lockett on Facebook and Instagram. And I'll see you guys in the next module.